It's the story of Vicky White, who was the deputy director. And let me see if I can get exactly where this was. This was the city of Florence in Lauderdale County, Alabama. And Vicky White was the deputy director of custody. And so this is a small-ish jail facility in Alabama. Do you remember how long she worked there, Mark? I don't. I remember.
I think it was I want to say 18 years.
Yep. Okay. So I thought I was thinking 17, 18 years. So
Yeah.
she had worked there quite a long time. All of a sudden, I guess the place to start is kind of follow the timeline of the documentary. In 2022, April 28th, this 17, 18-year employee submits her resignation letter, and it's effective the next day, April 29th. That right there is a little bit strange.
I'd say so.
Right. So even just that, I mean, hey, I guess people have their own way of wanting to leave the career. And, there's always that saying, Mark, 2 bad days or 3 bad days and I'm gone or whatever. But that maybe should raise a couple eyebrows. And I guess leading up to that, there were conversations she had about being under a lot of stress and a lot of stressful stuff going on. Regardless of all that, we'll touch on those other things in a minute. But the next day comes, April 29th. And because of her role as deputy director, she kind of calls the shots in this custody facility. And she calls for this one prisoner to be brought up to the booking area, whatever, shackled and readied for transport. They bring him up. She takes him out by herself. He's Casey White. He's there on a capital murder charge. I want to say that I think he had 10 visits to the county jail in the past 11 years. Obviously in and out of trouble. And like I said, currently facing a murder charge. She says she's going to take him to the courthouse for a mental health evaluation. Obviously, I don't know. I'm sure you don't know how things work in this particular Alabama county, if that's normal, abnormal, but they disappear. Can you remember back, Mark, to when this happened, before finding out the additional details, just that part of it where you think, oh, this capital murder suspect was being transported by this female deputy by herself, and they're both missing. What were your first thoughts on it?
You were asking me to actually remember when this happened in real time.
Yeah, if you did, if you even remember hearing about it when it happened.
Yeah. The truth is I remember the story. Mm-hmm. I remember the story very well. And by the time that it became news, there was enough detail that I remember seeing the first news conference. They already had a reason to believe that she had conspired with this inmate. So I didn't really have time to digest, any other details. They already had a reason to believe they were putting out there. And I can't remember if they actually gave a detail, but so we have reason to believe that this was not an abduction, things like this, that she was actually taking part in a crime. So, that's my first recollection of it. And again, so I didn't really have anywhere else to go when I first saw this. I thought, and by the way, it's not the first story like this. So when I heard those proclamations by the authorities, I thought, oh my God, it's happened again.
Right. That's interesting because I remember hearing about it and probably not hearing all the details, right? Just hearing about this guy escaped. And I thought, oh man, he definitely killed her. And, he somehow got free in the car, killed her, and he's off on his own somewhere. And like you said,
by the way, Bill, sorry to interrupt, but what I'm saying is it's the first time I remember hearing about it. So you may have heard about it earlier and, had a little, fresh information from the start. By the time it got into my world, they were talking about that this is probably a conspiracy.
Yep. And I think, listen, for me, I probably just didn't listen to the details. I just heard, guy escaped and immediately went to the assumption that he overpowered, his escort or whatever. Do you think that's unusual, though, that they would have a capital murder suspect being transported by a single deputy, not to say, male, female, just the fact that it's a lone deputy transporting a high risk inmate? Do you think that's unusual?
In my experience, terribly unusual. In other words, I mean, as a matter of fact, in the documentary, there's an example where another custody officer is transporting a a high threat individual to court or to a psych eval, whatever it is, mental evaluation. And she's actually on the radio letting people know that, hey, just FYI, I'm transporting so and so, so and so. And even that protocol, I thought that was lacking. In other words, there should be multiple, deputies or custody officers in a van with something like this. But with her, and we will get into this, but we know that she had done a trial run with
Yep.
this earlier, but I didn't want to get ahead of the game.